The crystalline dome of the grand chamber shimmered under the light of 3 distant suns. Through its transparent surface, thousands of stars were visible, a constant reminder of what the Galactic Council stood for: unity among the diverse intelligent species that inhabited those countless worlds. For over 7 decades, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered here to maintain peace, exchange resources, and advance scientific knowledge collectively. Alina Markov stood at one of the viewing platforms, her fingers absently tracing the council emblem on her diplomatic uniform. At 32, she was one of the youngest human ambassadors ever appointed to this esteemed interstellar body. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style that framed her face, highlighting eyes that carried both determination and a growing concern. Ambassador Markov. A melodic voice called from behind her. The emergency session begins in 5 minutes. Alina turned to find Ambassador Curl approaching. The ocean's translucent skin reflected the starlight in gentle pulses, a biological trait of their species that often made humans feel a peculiar comfort in their presence. "This won't be easy, will it?" Alina asked, already knowing the answer. Curl's 4-fingered hand rested briefly on Alina's shoulder. "The Council has weathered disagreements before, but I must warn you, the Drashan delegation has prepared a most confrontational stance." They walked together toward the chamber's inner sanctum. The corridors were unusually crowded with diplomatic staff rushing with urgent communications. Screens displayed footage from the border worlds, planets at the edge of Council space where resource disputes had escalated into armed conflicts. Alina caught glimpses of burning settlements and refugee ships. "They're pushing for full military intervention," Curl explained quietly. "A unified armed response with Council authority. And they expect Earth to contribute significant forces." Alina's jaw tightened. "We've always advocated for diplomatic solutions. Military force should be the absolute last resort." "I know," Curl replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But many now see humanity's persistence on peaceful resolution as impediment to decisive action." They entered the Grand Chamber, where hundreds of representatives from over 30 species were already seated in concentric rings around the central podium. The acoustic design allowed every word spoken at the center to be heard with perfect clarity throughout the chamber without amplification. Kazrak, the Drashan representative, was already at the podium. His scaled skin gleamed metallic blue under the lights, the spinal ridge that ran from the top of his skull down to his back fully extended, a sign of emotional intensity among his kind. Reports from the Meridian sector confirm another settlement has fallen, he was saying, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "While we deliberate endlessly, citizens of the Council die. This is the 3rd such attack this month alone." Alina took her seat at the Earth section, quickly scanning the room. The atmosphere was tense, unlike the measured diplomatic exchanges that typically characterize Council meetings. Several representatives from smaller worlds appeared visibly distressed. Kazrak continued, his clawed hand gesturing toward the holographic display showing the devastation. "We have identified the aggressors. We know their strengths and vulnerabilities. What we lack is not information, but will. The will to take decisive action." A murmur of agreement rippled through sections of the chamber. The Drashan Imperium proposes an immediate mobilization of a joint Council fleet. Every member world must contribute according to their capabilities. This force will secure the border regions and neutralize the threat permanently. Alina exchanged glances with her human colleagues. Earth's position had been consistent for decades. Military intervention without exhausting diplomatic channels first contradicted the very principles upon which the Council was founded. When Kazrak finished, the Council arbiter, a Centaurian with age-silvered skin, acknowledged Earth's request to respond. Alina rose and moved toward the podium. "Respected representatives," she began, her voice calm but firm. "Humanity shares your horror at the suffering in the border worlds. We mourn every life lost, but we must not allow emotion to drive us toward actions that may exacerbate rather than resolve the crisis." She activated her own data feed, displaying alternative information. Our analysis suggests that the attacks, while coordinated, come from disparate groups with legitimate grievances regarding resource allocation. These are not monolithic aggressors, but communities driven to desperation by ecological collapse on their worlds. Kazrak's ridge flared. Pretty words that comfort no one, Ambassador. The dead care little for. Your analysis of their killers' motivations. Alina continued undeterred. Earth proposes a three-pronged approach: humanitarian relief to affected areas, targeted diplomatic engagement with community leaders among the aggressors, and a limited security presence focused strictly on protecting civilian populations. More half measures, Kazrak interrupted. While you talk of engagement, more will die. Humanity has grown soft, living on your bountiful world. You've forgotten that sometimes strength is necessary to maintain peace. The debate grew heated. Representatives from mineral-rich worlds aligned with the Drashan position, while those with histories of conflict tended to favor Earth's approach. As hours passed, it became increasingly clear that the Council was dividing into factions. During a brief recess, Alina found herself cornered by a group of minor representatives from the outer systems. Ambassador Markov, said a Fahrenheit delegate, his insectoid features clicking with agitation. My world depends on the atmospheric regulators your scientists helped develop. If these conflicts spread, we lose access to essential maintenance expertise. We're doing everything we can to prevent escalation, Alina assured him. But perhaps the Drashan are right, interjected another delegate. A swift military response could end the threat before it grows. At what cost? Alina countered. How many innocent lives would be caught in that response? And once we normalize military solutions, where does it end? When the session resumed, the division had only deepened. Kazrak now openly accused Earth of obstructionism, claiming humanity's reluctance stemmed not from principle, but from cowardice. If Earth cannot fulfill its responsibilities to this council, he declared, his voice cutting through the chamber, perhaps it should reconsider its membership status. A shocked silence followed. Never in the Council's history had a founding member been so directly challenged. The Arbiter called for order as voices erupted throughout the chamber. As Alina watched the chaos unfold, a heaviness settled in her chest. For the first time, she could see clearly that something fundamental had shifted. The Council, once united in its pursuit of peaceful coexistence, was fracturing before her eyes. That night, in her quarters aboard the diplomatic station, Alina composed an urgent message to Earth's central government. The terminal's soft blue light illuminated her exhausted face as she chose her words carefully. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, she wrote. The principles upon which we join the Council are being systematically undermined. We must prepare for the possibility that humanity's path and the Council's may soon diverge. She paused, her finger hovering over the transmission button. Outside her viewport, the endless stars continued their silent vigil, indifferent to the political machinations that might soon reshape the galaxy's future. With a heavy heart, she sent the message, knowing that the actions taken in the coming days might well end 7 decades of interstellar cooperation. As the transmission confirmed, Alina turned to the stars and whispered, "What have we become?" The next 3 days brought no improvement. Each session grew more contentious than the last. Private diplomatic channels that had once facilitated compromise were now filled with ultimatums. Twice, Alina attempted to organize informal discussions among moderate representatives, but attendance was sparse and accomplishments negligible. On the 4th day, the council chamber was unusually full. Rumors had spread that a significant announcement was imminent. When Kazrak took the podium, his ridge was fully extended, a sign of triumphant confidence. "Distinguished representatives," he began, "I am pleased to announce that 27 member worlds have signed the Border Security Accord, authorizing immediate military action to secure our threatened territories. The combined fleet will depart within 48 hours. Alina sat stunned. The vote had bypassed normal council procedures, a clear violation of the charter. She requested emergency speaking privileges, which the arbiter reluctantly granted. This action fundamentally contradicts the Council's founding principles, she declared, her voice steady despite her internal turmoil. Earth cannot and will not support military intervention without exhausting peaceful alternatives first. We formally register our strongest protest. Kazrak's response was swift and cutting. Your protest is noted, Ambassador Markov. But the time for debate has passed. Will Earth contribute to the combined fleet, or will you shirk your responsibilities to this council? The question hung in the air. Alina felt the weight of 7 decades of cooperation, of countless joint achievements, balanced against the principles that defined humanity's place in the cosmos. Earth will not participate in an action we believe violates the very foundation of this council, she finally answered. The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Kazrak's scaled lips curved into what might have been a smile. Then let the record show that when action was needed, Earth stood aside. What followed was chaos. Accusations flew across the chamber. Some representatives defended Earth's stance, while others condemned it as abandonment of common security. Through it all, Alina maintained her composure, even as she watched decades of careful diplomacy unravel before her eyes. Later that evening, an emergency communication arrived from Earth. The message was brief but decisive. In light of the Council's deviation from its founding principles, Earth was formally suspending its active membership. The announcement came the following morning. Alina, standing straight-backed at the podium, delivered humanity's decision to the assembled representatives. It is with profound regret that I must inform this council that Earth is withdrawing from active participation, effective immediately. We cannot be part of an organization that has abandoned its commitment to peaceful resolution in favor of military might. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted over one another. Some called it betrayal. Others praised Earth's principled stance. Humanity doesn't abandon this galaxy. Alina continued once the noise subsided somewhat. We remain committed to peaceful coexistence and cooperation. But we cannot do so within a framework that now contradicts our deepest values. Kazrak strode to the secondary podium, his ridge flaring with what appeared to be both anger and satisfaction. Let it be recorded that the human delegation abandons this council in its time of greatest need. When faced with real danger, they retreat to the safety of their world. Remember this day. It marks humanity's failure of courage. Ambassador Curl approached Alina as she left the podium. This is a grave mistake, the Yoshin whispered, distress evident in the erratic pulsing of his skin. Without Earth's voice, what will balance the council? Perhaps they need to learn what that balance truly meant, Alina replied softly. Sometimes you don't value something until it's gone. Within hours, human diplomatic personnel began the process of withdrawal. Research stations, medical facilities, environmental teams all began preparations for departure. Some scientists tearfully embraced alien colleagues they had worked alongside for years. Others hurriedly transferred essential data, hoping their work would continue in their absence. Alina supervised the evacuation from the diplomatic station, watching as each human ship departed. The central plaza, once bustling with interspecies interaction, grew quieter with each passing hour. Several aliens approached her, some offering support, others expressing disappointment or anger. A young Fahrenheit scientist clutched Alina's hand in his spindly appendages. "What will happen to our atmospheric project?" he asked, his compound eyes reflecting the station's lights. "Without your team, our world's recovery may fail. I've ensured all research was transferred," Alina assured him, though she knew it wasn't just data that would be lost. It was expertise, dedication, and the particular human approach to problem solving. As the final diplomatic vessel prepared for departure, Alina stood at the viewing port for one last look at the council headquarters. Ambassador Curl appeared beside her, his translucent features clouded with concern. "This is not the end, Alina Markov," he said quietly. "But what follows may be darker than any of us imagine." "Take care of yourself, old friend," she replied, embracing the alien briefly. "History will judge whether we were right." As her ship pulled away from the station, Alina watched the grand structure diminish in size until it was just another point of light among the stars. She thought of all that humanity had contributed: medical advancements, environmental technologies, conflict mediation expertise, and wondered how long it would take before their absence was truly felt. "Set course for Earth," she instructed the pilot, then retreated to her quarters where, finally alone, she allowed herself to weep for what had been lost. 5 years passed. Alina Markov, once Earth's most prominent interstellar diplomat, now lived in relative seclusion in a coastal home on the Pacific Northwest. Her diplomatic career had effectively ended with Earth's withdrawal from the Council. Though officially designated as Special Advisor on Extraterrestrial Affairs, she had little to advise on these days. The morning routine never varied. She would rise before dawn, brew a pot of strong tea, and scan the encrypted reports that still came through on her secured terminal. Most contained troubling news. Today's update was particularly grim. She sipped her tea as she read about the ecological collapse on Firin, where the atmospheric regulation system had failed catastrophically without proper maintenance. An estimated 3 million Fahrenheits have been displaced, their delicate respiratory systems unable to cope with the degraded air quality. Another report detailed the expansion of the Drashan security zone, which now encompassed 12 formerly independent systems. The language was clinical, but Alina had spent enough years in diplomacy to read between the lines. Occupation, not protection. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission, unusual at this hour. Alina activated the screen to find a familiar face. Dr. Sanjay Mehta, former head of the Council's Xenobiology Division and one of the few colleagues with whom she maintained regular contact. "Alina," he said without preamble, his normally calm features tense with urgency. "Have you seen the reports from the Tethros system?" "Not yet." "What's happening?" "The BioCore project. Someone leaked information about it. The Drashan are mobilizing a fleet. They're calling it a preventative security operation." Alina felt a chill. The BioCore project had been Earth's most classified research initiative since the withdrawal. A revolutionary approach to planetary restoration that combined advanced bioengineering with environmental manipulation. It represented humanity's hope of addressing the ecological crises that plagued many worlds. How bad is the leak? Bad enough. They know the installation's location, and they've framed it as an unauthorized weapons research facility. Their fleet launches in 3 days. Alina's mind raced. If the Drashan destroyed the BioCore research, years of work would be lost. Work that could potentially restore devastated worlds like Firin. "What's the official response?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "There isn't one. Earth's policy remains non-intervention. The BioCore team has been ordered to evacuate, but Dr. Chandra refuses to leave. She says they're too close to a breakthrough." Alina closed her eyes briefly, weighing options that shouldn't have been hers to consider. Who else knows about this? A small group of former council scientists, some representatives from affected worlds, people who understand what's at stake. The unspoken question hung between them. Alina stared out her window at the peaceful ocean, thinking of distant worlds where no such peace existed. "I'll need a secure channel to Curl," she said finally, "and information on any ships heading toward the outer systems." Sanjay's relief was visible. "I'll send everything I have." And Alina, "Thank you." After the transmission ended, Alina remained at the window for a long moment. 5 years of self-imposed exile, of watching from a distance as the galaxy spiraled toward greater conflict. Perhaps it was time to stop watching. She activated a secure file and began composing a message to the handful of former colleagues she still trusted. The subject line read simply, "Tethros Initiative." Within 3 days, a small, unmarked transport vessel departed Earth under the pretext of a routine supply mission to one of humanity's outer colonies. Its actual destination was a rendezvous point in neutral space where representatives from 7 species waited with their own inconspicuous crafts. The makeshift fleet traveled in separate jumps to avoid detection, regrouping only when necessary for navigation coordination. Alina found herself in command not by design, but by unspoken consensus. Besides Dr. Mehta, Their group included Sirhan, a Fahrenheit biologist whose family had been among the displaced, two Yoshin scientists who had worked with the Biocore researchers, a Centaurian navigator, and most surprisingly, three Drashan dissidents who opposed their government's increasingly militaristic policies. One of these, Tarvek, had once served in the Drashan diplomatic corps before being designated a political undesirable. His scales had dulled from lack of proper nutrition during his years in hiding, but his eyes remained sharp and evaluative. The fleet commander is Admiral Vex, he informed them during a strategy session. He's ambitious, methodical, and utterly loyal to Kazrak, who now leads our central authority. They will not be deterred by reason or appeals to compassion. Then we'll have to be smarter, Alina replied. The research station has limited defenses, but its location provides some natural protection. If we can reach it before the Drashan fleet, we might be able to secure the Biocore technology and evacuate the scientists. Surin's antennae quivered with anxiety. And if we cannot, Alina met his compound gaze steadily. Then we do everything possible to ensure the research survives, even if the facility doesn't. Their journey took them through increasingly dangerous regions. The collapse of council authority had left many sectors lawless, with pirate bands preying on vulnerable traffic. Twice they narrowly avoided detection by Drashan patrols. The strain began to show on all of them, manifesting intense silences and occasional flares of temper. During one particularly close encounter, their ships had to power down completely and drift through an asteroid field to avoid detection. In the darkness of the command deck, illuminated only by emergency lighting, Alina found Tarvek staring at the tactical display. "Why are you really here?" she asked quietly. "You're risking everything to help the very people your government considers enemies." The Drashan's scaled lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Perhaps for the same reason you left your safe retirement, human. Some principles transcend politics." He turned to face her fully, his ridge partially extended in what she recognized as a gesture of sincerity. "I served as cultural attaché on Earth for 3 years. I saw how your people value individual thought, how you question authority when it contradicts your moral compass. My people once valued such things too, before Kazrak's faction gained control." Alina considered this, and the Biocore technology could benefit all worlds, not just those favored by the current power structure. He gestured toward the starfield visible through the viewport. "There are millions on Drashan colony worlds suffering from resource depletion. Our government tells them it is necessary hardship while they build military might. The Biocore could change that narrative." Their conversation was interrupted by the navigator announcing they were approaching Tethro's space. The view outside shifted as they emerged from faster-than-light travel, revealing a distant ice planet orbiting a pale sun. Tethros was a harsh world, its surface locked in permanent winter. The research station had been established there precisely because the extreme conditions provided natural isolation and security. As they approached, long-range scanners detected no Drashan vessels yet, but their intelligence suggested they had perhaps 12 hours before the fleet arrived. The landing was treacherous. Howling winds buffeted their ships as they descended through Tethros' thick atmosphere. Ice crystals formed instantly on their viewports, requiring constant de-icing. The research facility itself was barely visible, a series of interconnected domes half buried in the frozen landscape. Dr. Mehta established communication with the station as they approached. "This is Rescue Group Alpha requesting emergency landing clearance." After a tense moment, a voice responded, "Identify yourselves immediately or defensive measures will be activated." "Dr. Chandra, this is Sanjay Mehta. Alina Markov is with me. We've come to help." Another pause, then, "Landing Bay 3 has been cleared for your approach. Hurry." The facility's interior was a stark contrast to the frozen wasteland outside. Bright lighting illuminated well-organized laboratories where a small team of scientists worked with focused intensity. Dr. Chandra, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and determined eyes, greeted them with a mixture of relief and concern. "You shouldn't have come," she said, embracing Dr. Mehta briefly. but I'm grateful you did. We're so close to completion. She led them through the facility to the central laboratory where the biocore prototype was housed. It resembled a large crystalline structure, pulsing with inner light that shifted through various spectra. Surrounding it were complex monitoring stations and containment fields. "It's beautiful," Alina whispered, understanding immediately why Dr. Chandra had refused to abandon it. "It's more than beautiful," the scientist replied. "It's hope. The biocore can accelerate natural regenerative processes exponentially. Dead soil becomes fertile. Toxic atmospheres begin self-purification. And it's self-replicating once established. One core can eventually restore an entire planetary ecosystem." Tarvek stepped forward, his scaled skin reflecting the core's pulsing light. "How long until it's operational?" "The prototype is functioning now, but only at 10% capacity. We need another week to complete the calibration sequence." Alina exchanged glances with her companions. "Dr. Chandra, we don't have a week. The Drashan fleet will be here in less than 12 hours. The scientist's face fell. "Then we've failed. The calibration process cannot be rushed without risking complete system failure." "What about partial deployment?" Suren asked, his antennae twitching with excitement. "Even at reduced capacity, could it be enough to establish a foothold?" Dr. Chandra hesitated. "Theoretically, yes, but we've never tested it in actual field conditions. The environmental feedback could be unpredictable. We need to prepare for evacuation," Alina decided. "Dr. Chandra, gather everything essential for continuing the research elsewhere. Dr. Mehta, work with Sirhin to determine if partial deployment is viable as a last resort. The rest of us will establish defensive positions." They worked frantically through the next hours. Essential research data was copied to secure storage devices. The most critical components of the biocore were prepared for potential transport. Defensive systems, limited as they were brought to full readiness. 9 hours into their preparations, the perimeter sensors triggered. Tarvek, monitoring the security station, called Alina over with grim urgency. "They're ahead of schedule," he reported, displaying the long-range scan. Multiple vessels were decelerating into Tethro's orbit. And that's not just a security detail. That's a full battle group. Alina studied the tactical display with growing concern. How many? One capital ship, 4 destroyers, and multiple smaller craft. They're launching landing vessels. The odds had just shifted from difficult to nearly impossible. Even if they managed to evacuate with the core technology, they would never outrun that fleet. Dr. Chandra joined them, her face pale but determined. "We need to consider activating the core." "You said it wasn't ready," Alina reminded her. "It isn't. But if they capture this facility intact, they'll either weaponize our research or destroy it completely. At least if we activate it now, there's a chance, however small, that it might establish itself." The implications were clear. Activating an untested system could have unpredictable consequences, potentially endangering everyone at the facility. But the alternative meant losing everything they had worked for. Alina made her decision. "Begin the activation sequence, but prepare the evacuation ships as well. We'll hold off the Drashan forces as long as possible to give the core time to initialize." As Dr. Chandra and her team rushed to implement the plan, the first explosions rocked the facility's outer defenses. The Drashan forces had landed and were beginning their assault. Alina coordinated their small defensive team from the control center, using the facility's limited security systems to maximum advantage. Automated turrets targeted the first wave of attackers, while shield generators strained to deflect the bombardment. "They're concentrating on the eastern approach," Tarvek reported, his ridge fully extended with stress. "Standard Drashan assault pattern. They'll breach within minutes." "Redirect power to the eastern shields," Alina ordered. "Dr. Chandra, what's the status of the core?" "Initialization at 30%, came the tense reply. "We need at least 20 more minutes for a minimal stable activation." Another explosion, closer this time, sent tremors through the facility. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. East shield collapsing, someone reported. Fall back to secondary positions, Alina commanded. Tarvek, take 3 people and hold the corridor to Lab Section C. We need to buy more time. The Drashin nodded grimly, selecting their strongest fighters to accompany him. As they moved to their positions, Alina turned to find Sirhan at her side. The biocore is responding to the energy fluctuations, the Fahrenheit reported, his voice vibrating with excitement despite the danger. The initialization process is accelerating, but it's becoming unstable. From the corridor came the sound of weapons fire, the first direct engagement with the invading forces. Tarvek's voice crackled over the comm. Multiple hostiles engaged. We're holding, but not for long. In the lab, Dr. Chandra worked frantically at the core's control station. The power surges from the attacks are actually feeding into the initialization process, she called out. It's at 60% already, but the containment field is fluctuating. Another violent tremor shook the facility. The lights flickered momentarily before emergency power kicked in. They've breached the secondary entrance, someone reported. 5 minutes until they reach the main lab. Alina made the hardest decision of her life. Everyone to the evacuation ships now. Dr. Chandra set the core to complete its initialization sequence automatically. If we leave it unmonitored during full activation, Dr. Chandra began. We have no choice, Alina cut in. Better an uncontrolled activation than letting it fall into their hands. As the scientists hurriedly gathered their most essential data, Alina contacted Tarvek's team. Fall back to the evacuation point immediately. We're abandoning the facility. Understood, came the strained reply, followed by more weapons fire. The evacuation proceeded with desperate efficiency. Small groups made their way to the landing bay where their vessels waited. Dr. Chandra was the last to leave the core laboratory, her face a mask of professional grief as she locked in the final activation sequence. Alina remained at the control center, coordinating the retreat and monitoring the invaders' progress. The Drashin forces were methodically working their way through the facility, disabling systems as they advanced. When the last evacuation group reported they were aboard, Alina prepared to leave her position. A new alert caught her attention, a priority transmission on a Drashin command frequency. Curious, she routed it to her console. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a face she hadn't seen in 5 years but would never forget. Kazrak, now bearing additional rank insignia, his scaled features set in an expression of cold determination. This is Commander Kazrak to all assault units. The human bioweapon must be secured intact. I repeat, secure, not destroy. This technology could shift the balance of power throughout the quadrant. Alina felt a surge of bitter vindication. So if this was never about security, it was about power, just as they had suspected. As she turned to leave, another tremor shook the facility, stronger than any previous impact. Warning signals flashed across all consoles. For a moment, Alina thought the Drashin had begun a heavier bombardment, but then she realized the truth. The biocore's initialization was becoming unstable, affecting the planet itself. She ran for the evacuation bay, communication device in hand. Dr. Chandra, what's happening with the core? It's exceeding all projected parameters, came the astonished reply. The energy signature is growing exponentially. Alina, you need to get out now. The corridor ahead was suddenly blocked by falling debris as another violent tremor shook the structure. Alina changed direction, seeking an alternate route. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of the Drashin forces drawing closer. As she rounded a corner, she found herself face to face with a Drashin assault team. Before either could react, a third tremor, the strongest yet, sent them all sprawling. The ceiling partially collapsed, separating Alina from the Drashin soldiers. Taking advantage of the confusion, she scrambled through a maintenance access way, emerging near a secondary airlock. Outside, through the reinforced viewport, she could see the planet's surface beginning to change. The permanent ice covering was fracturing in geometric patterns, releasing steam geysers that illuminated the darkness with an eerie blue-green light. Her communication device crackled. Alina, it was Dr. Mehta. Where are you? The last ship is preparing for emergency launch. I'm cut off from a main bay, she replied, watching in awe as the transformation outside accelerated. There's a secondary airlock in Section J. Is anyone close enough to reach it? A new voice joined the channel. Tarvek, I can get to you. Hold position. Minutes later, the Drashin appeared, his uniform torn and scales darkened with exertion. We have to hurry, he panted. The facility's structural integrity is failing as the planet's crust shifts. Together, they navigated the increasingly unstable corridors. Twice they were forced to detour around collapsed sections. The facility's automated systems blared warnings about catastrophic failures in multiple systems. They had nearly reached the secondary landing area when a final, massive tremor threw them against the walls. Metal groaned and buckled around them. Tarvek pushed Alina forward just as a support beam crashed down, pinning his lower body beneath its weight. Go, he urged as she turned back to help him. The ships must launch now, or none will escape. Alina hesitated only a moment before grabbing his arm. I didn't come all this way to start leaving people behind again. With strength born of desperation, she leveraged the beam enough for Tarvek to pull himself free. His leg was clearly injured, but he could move with support. Together, they stumbled the final distance to the airlock where a small shuttle waited. As they secured themselves inside, the launch sequence already initiating, Alina caught a final glimpse of the facility through the viewport. The biocore's energy signature was visible even from outside, pulsing light shooting skyward as the planet continued its transformation. Their small vessel shuddered as it broke free of Tethros's gravitational pull. Above them, the larger ships of their makeshift fleet were already climbing toward orbit, pursued by Drashin vessels. Status report. Alina called over the fleet communication channel. All evacuation ships away, Dr. Mehta responded. The Drashin fleet is in disarray. Something about the core's activation is disrupting their systems. Indeed, the tactical display showed the Drashin vessels pulling back, their formations breaking as they attempted to distance themselves from the planet. The core, Dr. Chandra's voice came through, filled with wonder. It's not just working. It's exceeding every parameter we established. The energy signature suggests total planetary integration is already beginning. From their retreating vantage point, they could see the truth of her words. The frozen surface of Tethros was transforming before their eyes. Massive fissures revealed liquid water beneath the ice. The planet's atmosphere, once thin and inert, was visibly thickening with new elements. It should have taken years, Dr. Chandra continued, but something about the uncontrolled activation accelerated the process exponentially. Tethros is coming alive. As their fleet regrouped at the designated rendezvous point beyond the system's edge, they received reports from across the galaxy. News of what had happened on Tethros was spreading rapidly, despite Drashin attempts to control the narrative. Worlds that had suffered ecological damage under the new regime saw the events as a symbol of hope. Others, particularly those aligned with the Drashin, portrayed it as a dangerous human experiment gone wrong. In the command center of their largest vessel, Alina stood before a gathered group of scientists, diplomats, and refugees from multiple worlds. Dr. Chandra's latest analysis of Tethros played on the main screen, showing continued transformation as the biocore technology spread throughout the planet systems. What we witnessed wasn't just the activation of a new technology, Alina told them. It was proof that restoration is possible. Worlds that have been stripped of resources, whose environments have been damaged beyond natural recovery, they can be healed. Sirhin stepped forward, his antennae quivering with emotion. My world, Firin, has less than a decade before total atmospheric collapse. With this technology, it won't be simple, Dr. Chandra cautioned. What happened on Tethros was unplanned, dangerous. Proper implementation would require careful calibration for each world's specific conditions. But it is possible, Tarvek added. From a medical chair where his injuries were being treated, The Drashin's eyes gleamed with newfound purpose. And not just possible, necessary. The path my people have chosen leads only to more conflict, more depletion. This offers an alternative. Alina looked around at the faces before her. Humans, aliens, former enemies now united by a common vision. 5 years ago, humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council because we could not be part of an organization that had abandoned its principles. In doing so, we may have hastened the collapse we sought to prevent. Everything fell apart. Alliances, cooperation, trust. Worlds that once prospered now struggle to survive. She stepped closer to the view screen showing Tethros's ongoing transformation. But perhaps that collapse was necessary. Sometimes old structures must fall before new ones can be built. What we've witnessed on Tethros isn't just ecological regeneration. It's a symbol of what's possible when we work together again, but differently this time. Dr. Mehta joined her at the view screen. The question remains, what do we do now? The Drashin authorities will not simply allow us to distribute this technology. They've already labeled it a bioweapon, and many worlds will fear it, added one of the Yoshin scientists. Change on this scale frightens those in power. Alina nodded, acknowledging the challenges ahead. We cannot force this upon anyone, but neither can we keep it to ourselves. This technology belongs to all worlds that need healing. Tarvek struggled to stand, waving away assistance. There are factions within the Drashin territories that would support this approach. Many of our colony worlds suffer under central authority policies. If they saw an alternative, a new coalition, Sirhan suggested, his compound eyes reflecting the light from the screen. Not a council that dictates from above, but a network of worlds committed to restoration. The idea spread through the room like a current, energizing even the most exhausted among them. But Alina remained clear-eyed about the obstacles they faced. The path forward won't be easy, she cautioned. The Drashin fleet will hunt us. Resources are scarce, and we're still learning how to control the biocore technology properly. Yet here we are, Dr. Chandra replied with quiet confidence. A human diplomat, a Drashin dissident, scientist from across the galaxy, working together because we must. Perhaps that's the real breakthrough. The discussion continued late into the ship's night cycle, plans forming and evolving as each person contributed their expertise. When most had finally retired to rest, Alina remained in the observation dome, watching the stars. Sirhan found her there, his slight frame silhouetted against the cosmos. You seem troubled, Ambassador Markov. Alina smiled faintly at the title she hadn't held for years. Not troubled, contemplative. 5 years ago, I delivered humanity's withdrawal from the Council. I truly believed we were making a principled stand that others would recognize. Instead, everything collapsed. You cannot hold yourself responsible for that, Sirhan said gently. The seeds of that collapse were planted long before. Perhaps, but I've had 5 years to wonder if there was another way. She turned to face the Fahrenheit directly. Now we stand at another turning point. If we fail this time, the consequences could be even more dire. And if we succeed, Alina's gaze returned to the stars. Then maybe, from these ruins, something better emerges. In the weeks that followed, their impromptu fleet became a mobile research station. Dr. Chandra and her team worked tirelessly to refine the biocore technology, analyzing the ongoing data from Tethros, where the transformation had stabilized into a self-sustaining process. Ice continued to recede, revealing vast, mineral-rich landmasses. Primitive atmospheric microorganisms, dormant for millennia beneath the ice, had begun to flourish in the changing conditions. They established secure communications with sympathetic contacts on various worlds, building a clandestine network of support. Resources were scarce, and they frequently had to change location to avoid Drashin patrols. But word of what they had achieved spread, impossible to contain despite official censorship. 3 months after Tethros, they received their first formal request. The Governing Council of Miradon, a small agricultural world whose soil had been depleted by intensive farming, offered sanctuary in exchange for help implementing the biocore technology. It was a risk for all involved, Miradon had nominal independence, but existed within the Drashan sphere of influence. The decision to accept wasn't made lightly. Their group, now calling itself the Restoration Alliance, debated for days. Ultimately, it was Tarvek who swayed the final votes. If we continue to hide, we only prove the Drashan narrative that our technology is dangerous and illegitimate, he argued. Miradon offers us a chance to demonstrate its true purpose. Their arrival on Miradon was conducted with utmost secrecy. A remote valley in the planet's southern continent was selected for the first controlled biocore implementation. Under Dr. Chandra's supervision, a scaled-down version of the technology was calibrated specifically for Miradon's ecosystem. Alina stood with Miradon's chief administrator, an elderly woman named Laris, as the activation sequence began. Unlike on Tethros, this process was measured, controlled, a gentle awakening rather than an explosive birth. Over the following weeks, the results became impossible to ignore. Soil that had been dead for generations showed renewed microbial activity. Native plant species, long extinct in the region, began to sprout from seemingly barren ground. Water quality in nearby streams improved as natural filtration systems regenerated. "It's like watching a miracle," Laris said one evening as they surveyed the valley together. "But I fear it cannot remain secret much longer. Already people from neighboring regions come to see what is happening here." Alina nodded, having anticipated this problem. Secrecy was never the long-term goal. What happens here needs to be seen, but on our terms, with proper explanation, before the Drashan authorities can twist the narrative. They formulated a plan to document the Miradon restoration in detail: scientific data, visual evidence, testimonials from local communities. This information package was distributed through their growing network to scientific communities, independent worlds, and even sympathetic contacts within Drashan territory. The response exceeded all expectations. Requests for assistance flooded in from dozens of worlds facing ecological crises. Small delegations arrived on Miradon to witness the transformation firsthand. Even some minor council members sent unofficial representatives, curious about the technology that had been labeled dangerous by Drashan propaganda. Of course, the backlash was equally swift. The Drashan Central Authority issued formal condemnation of unauthorized biogenetic manipulation on Miradon. Security patrols in the sector increased. Sanctions were threatened against any world providing support to the Restoration Alliance. 6 months into the Miradon project, the confrontation they had been dreading finally arrived. Long-range sensors detected a Drashan battle group entering the system, a force large enough to overwhelm Miradon's minimal defenses. Alina called an emergency meeting of the Alliance leadership. "We always knew this moment would come," she told them grimly. "We need to decide now. Do we evacuate, or do we stand our ground?" The debate was intense. Dr. Chandra argued for protecting the research at all costs. If we lose the core team and data, implementation on other worlds becomes nearly impossible. Tarvek, now firmly established as their security coordinator, countered, "If we run at the first sign of confrontation, we undermine everything we claim to stand for. The Drashan expect us to flee. It would confirm their narrative that we're operating illicitly." Sirhan, who had become an effective diplomat for their cause, suggested a third option. "What if we neither flee nor fight? What if we invite inspection? Force them to witness what we've actually accomplished here?" The room fell silent as they considered this approach. It was risky, potentially placing their key people and technology directly in Drashan hands. But it also offered a chance to change the narrative entirely. "There's another factor to consider," Alina added quietly. "Our network has informed us that several ships in that battle group come from colonies that are themselves suffering ecological damage. The crews have families on worlds that could benefit from our work." The decision was made. Rather than evacuating or preparing for hopeless resistance, they sent an open communication to the approaching fleet, inviting their commander to send a delegation to observe the Miradon restoration project. The tense days that followed tested everyone's resolve. The Drashan fleet entered orbit, weapon systems active but holding fire. After 48 hours of silence, They received a response. A delegation would descend to inspect the alleged restoration technology. When the Drashin shuttle landed in the central plaza of Miradon's capital, Alina stood at the forefront of the welcoming party, flanked by Dr. Chandra and local officials. The delegation emerged led by a senior commander whose elaborate ridge markings identified him as a high-ranking member of the Central Authority. What no one had expected was the figure who emerged behind him, Kazrak himself, his scaled features set in the same cold expression Alina remembered from years before. "Ambassador Markov," he said, using her former title with deliberate emphasis. "5 years of exile have not improved your judgment. Interfering in the affairs of worlds under Drashin protection is a serious offense." Alina maintained her composure. "We're not interfering, Counselor Kazrak. We were invited by Miradon's legitimate government to help address their ecological crisis. An invitation we accepted out of the same principle that once guided the Council: mutual aid among worlds." "Principles," Kazrak repeated with a dismissive gesture. "While you cling to principles, we maintain order across the galaxy. Order that your unsanctioned experiments threaten. Perhaps you should see these experiments before passing judgment," Dr. Chandra interjected. "We've prepared a full briefing on the biocore technology and its implementations here." What followed was a carefully orchestrated tour of the restoration zones. Dr. Chandra presented the scientific data with impeccable precision. Local farmers testified to the improved yields from previously barren fields. Even the Drashin scientists in the delegation could not deny the evidence before them. This was not a weapon or a danger, but a genuine breakthrough in ecological restoration. Throughout the tour, Kazrak remained outwardly unmoved, asking occasional pointed questions but revealing nothing of his thoughts. The junior officers accompanying him, however, showed increasing interest, especially those from colony worlds. The culmination came at the primary biocore installation, where the technology's function could be observed directly. As the delegation studied the core's controlled energy field, Alina noticed one of the younger Drashin officers in deep conversation with Dr. Chandra, asking detailed questions about application protocols. That evening, a formal dinner brought all parties together in Miradon's governmental hall. The atmosphere remained tense, but had shifted subtly from hostility to cautious assessment. When the formal speeches concluded, Kazrak requested a private conversation with Alina. They stepped onto a balcony overlooking the capital city, its lights glowing softly in the gathering darkness. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Your technology works," Kazrak finally said, his voice lower than during his public pronouncements. "That cannot be denied. But you must understand the complications its existence creates." "I understand politics, Kazrak. I understand how power operates. What I don't understand is why proven restoration technology should be suppressed when so many worlds suffer." The Drashin's ridge flattened slightly, a sign of moderated aggression. The council collapsed when humanity withdrew. In that vacuum, someone had to maintain order. And has that order benefited the ordinary citizens of the galaxy? Has it restored dying worlds or merely controlled them? Kazrak turned to face her directly. "You speak as though restoration and control are opposites. They are not. Both require planning, resources, authority. But they serve different purposes," Alina countered. "One preserves life. The other preserves power structures." "A simplistic view," Kazrak said, but without his earlier contempt. "However, I did not bring you here to debate philosophy. I came to offer terms. Terms. The Drashin Authority will not oppose implementations of your technology on worlds within our sphere, under specific conditions. First, all projects must include Drashin scientific oversight. Second, distribution must occur through official channels, not your underground network. Third, the original research team must share all data with our Central Scientific Committee. Alina studied him carefully. This was not the absolute rejection she had expected. And in return, your people receive full amnesty for past activities. The technology is recognized as legitimate. And he hesitated almost imperceptibly, certain ecological priorities within our territories would be addressed first. Understanding dawned. Your home colonies are facing crises too, aren't they? Worlds that the Central Authority promised to protect, but lacks the resources to save. Kazrak did not confirm this directly, but his ridge flattened further, a vulnerable gesture from Drashin. Political necessity and biological reality do not always align. Later that night, Alina convened the Alliance leadership to discuss the offer. Opinions were divided, with many distrusting Drashin intentions. It could be a trap, Tarvek warned. A way to get control of the technology and then discard us. Or it could be the legitimacy we need, Sirhan countered. Working openly would allow us to reach more worlds faster. Dr. Chandra focused on the practical aspects. I need to know exactly what sharing data entails. The biocore technology is complex and potentially dangerous if misapplied. I won't hand over research that could be weaponized. Through the long debate, Alina remained mostly silent, weighing all perspectives. When she finally spoke, the room quieted immediately. 5 years ago, humanity left the Council because we would not compromise our principles. We believed our departure would force others to recognize what was being lost. Instead, everything collapsed. She looked around at her diverse team. Human, Fahrenheit, Yoshin, Drashin, united by a common cause. Perhaps now we have a chance to build something better from those ruins. What are you suggesting? Dr. Mehta asked. I'm suggesting we accept Kazrak's offer, but with our own conditions. Yes to oversight, but joint oversight, not control. Yes to official channels, but with transparency to prevent political blocking. Yes to data sharing, but with ethical protocols established first. He may not accept those terms, Tarvek warned. He may not, Alina acknowledged. But I believe he needs this technology as much as the galaxy needs it. That gives us leverage we didn't have before. The negotiations that followed were grueling, extending over several days. Kazrak pushed for greater Drashin control. Alina's team insisted on independent verification protocols. Both sides threatened to walk away multiple times. But ultimately, necessity drove them toward agreement. The Miradon Accord, as it came to be known, established the framework for galactic ecological restoration. The biocore technology would be implemented through a new body, not quite the old council, but a focused coalition of worlds committed to environmental recovery. Oversight would be shared among multiple species, with strict protocols against weaponization. As the Drashin delegation prepared to depart, Kazrak approached Alina one final time. This is not the victory either of us envisioned years ago. No, she agreed. But perhaps it's the one the galaxy needed. Not dominance by any single vision, but collaboration toward necessary goals. We shall see, the Drashin replied. History will judge whether this new beginning is stronger than what collapsed before. 1 year later, Alina stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned research vessel restoration. Through the viewport, she could see Firin in the distance, once dying, now showing the first signs of recovery as the carefully calibrated biocore technology rejuvenated its atmosphere. Sirhan had returned to his homeworld to oversee the project, his expertise now valued across the galaxy. Dr. Chandra joined her, data tablet in hand. The results from the Tethro's long-term study just came in. The transformation has stabilized completely. Indigenous life forms are evolving to take advantage of the new conditions. It's become a self-sustaining system. And the other implementation sites? 17 worlds now have functioning biocores. Each one teaches us more about calibration for different conditions. The Drashin scientists have actually contributed valuable insights to the stabilization protocols. Alina nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The galaxy was far from healed, politically or ecologically. The new coalition remained fragile, with old tensions occasionally threatening progress. But worlds that had been dying now had hope. Species that had regarded each other with suspicion now worked toward common goals. We have a visitor, Dr. Chandra noted, gesturing toward the shuttle bay on her monitor. Ambassador Curl has arrived from the Yoshin homeworld. Alina smiled at the thought of seeing her old friend again. The ocean had been among the first to embrace the restoration initiative, offering their unique biological insights to the project. Later, she and Curl walked the ship's arboretum, where samples of plant species from dozens of worlds grew under carefully regulated conditions. The ocean's skin pulsed with gentle light, reflecting his contentment. "I remember our last conversation before humanity withdrew," he said. "I told you what followed might be darker than any of us imagined." "You were right," Alina acknowledged. "The collapse was more complete than we predicted. Yet here we are, building anew." Curl paused before a specimen from his homeworld, a luminescent fern that responded to proximity by brightening. Not the old council reborn, but something perhaps more honest, focused on tangible needs rather than political power. "It's still fragile," Alina cautioned. "The Drashan Authority maintains its military dominance. Many worlds remain skeptical of cooperation after being abandoned." "Yes," Curl agreed. "But fragile beginnings can grow strong with proper care. Like these specimens." He gestured to the plants around them. "The important thing is that the seeds are planted." As they completed their circuit of the arboretum, a communication alert sounded. A new world on the galaxy's edge was requesting assistance, an independent colony experiencing rapid atmospheric degradation. Their message specifically requested Alina Markov as the diplomatic contact. "They still look to humanity," Curl observed. "Despite everything, your species' perspective is valued." Alina considered this as she reviewed the incoming data. "Perhaps it's because we were willing to walk away from power to maintain principle, and then willing to return when needed, not to rule, but to restore." She sent confirmation that the restoration vessel would alter course to assess the situation. As the ship's engines hummed with renewed purpose, Alina looked out once more at the stars, the same star she had watched 5 years earlier when humanity forsook the Galactic Council and everything collapsed. From that collapse, something new was emerging. Not perfect, not complete, but alive with possibility. "Sometimes," she murmured, "things must fall apart before they can be rebuilt properly." Through the viewport, distant Firen gleamed with renewed vibrancy, its atmosphere already showing the blue-green hues of recovery. One world among many, each with its own challenges, each now with renewed hope. In the silence of space, the ship altered course toward its next destination, not to conquer or control, but to heal what had been broken.